Hey, greetings everyone. And we got a little bit of feedback going on. Hang on. All right. Hopefully this is going to fix this. So, all right. Uh, sorry for the rough start. My name is Thomas Price, and you're watching Lines on a Page. Basically, for those of you who have never seen an episode of Lines on a Page, it's basically just me working on whatever it is that I just happen to be working on. Today is a little bit different because we are doing a little bit of a teaching kind of situation regarding inking. It's something that I've continuously always get questions on for people that are starting to get into it. Um, I'm going to go ahead and put up a few disclaimers. One, I am not a professional inker by trade, but what I have learned has been from the professionals themselves. Um, and that is everything from looking at books such as Framed Ink or the Comic Art Guide to Inking, as well as the DC Guide to Inking. That is also, studying guys like, Klaus Hansen and Scott Williams and a few others, as well as asking questions of certain professionals who are also very good inkers, despite the fact that they are often looked at as pencilers. So, all that being said, I wanted to put those disclaimers out there. One of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to inking is people starting off, and I fell into this trap too. So you would start off and tracing over your pencil work, and you wonder why things are looking kind of wonky. Well, tracing over your pencil line with a pen does not qualify as inking. And that is something that was a bit of a revelation for me once they got pointed out by a professional. So it's one of those things that just kind of put my butt in gear. And all that being said, we just want to get down to it. So before I continue on, just wanted to quickly do this before Josh says that, why did you do this? Haven Comics, where I'm currently sitting at and located, is on 1871 Slaughter Road in Madison, Alabama. And if you happen to like the show, any other show that we do, please remember to like and subscribe. Okay, all that being said and done, we're going to get straight to this. All right, so this is a solo piece that I'm doing specifically for Haven Comics because pre-RPG Day is coming up soon, and we just wanted to do like a updated graphic thing regarding advertisement. Now, there are going to be a couple different pens and stuff like that I'm going to be using. I'm not going to be doing brush. I'm not going to be doing any sort of nib. So that includes G Pen, Maro Pen, Hunt 103, none of that stuff. Partly because the vast majority of people that are trying to get into inking, they don't know where to start. 9 times out of 10, if there is a hobby and craft store, they're more likely to have some of the bare essentials, which are fine liners, like these Pigment Microns. And of course, there are other companies that do something similar, like Faber-Castell, Stadler, and even Copic. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to find this or something similar to it. Step from that is going to be the Tombow for the Sike pen. It is listed as a brush pen, but it's really not. Similar ones to this. There is a micron version of this. I think it's listed as micron brush, um, or micron PN. It's one to two, but this one may or may not be used today. Any sort of like brushing thing that's going to happen is going to be one of these two things. So we do have the um, God, I forgot what this one is called. Uh, but this is the pencil pocket brush, as you can see here. Now, as far as just like major black areas, I did move away from using strictly ink, and I've basically have been using Posca Black uh, paint pens. So this one obviously has a bit of a brush tip. This one is a bit of more chisel ends, but that's basically what I've been doing for a lot of the major black areas, which are denoted with these X's littered about the place. And if you have any questions at any point in terms of whatever it is that I'm doing, uh, any sort of material that I would recommend or whatever, please do. For this particular video, I did unfortunately have to tighten up my pencils, which is hard to do with 0.9 lead because it kind of smears everywhere. So we're going to get straight to it. And as you can obviously tell, we've got four ventures, and they don't know what's around them in the darkness, walking up the steps of these rooms. So we do have like a giant eyeball looking down at them. We've also got two smaller eyeballs down here looking up. Uh, could be a beholder, could be a dragon, could be trolls. Who knows? But we've got a dwarf, a raccoon thief, a mage, and a female barbarian or shield maiden, whichever one you want to call it. So, as far as just the main line for this, I typically have been using an O2. Some people would normally use like an O1 or an O3. I like using an O2 just because there's enough of a line difference between this and a 005, which is a lot thinner. So we're going to start working from left to right, and I would be moving this piece of paper around, and I do apologize for that. So real quick, I'm going to be using one of these stencils. Could I freehand this? Yes. Am I going to? Not today. Not feeling that brave. Now, I did use this particular stencil whenever I was working the individual columns regarding the arts right here. But because we're dealing with like messy brickwork, it just kind of goes out the window. But it's nice to do that so you can at least get an idea as to whether or not if you want it like, pristine looking archways, or in this case, you know, it's the ruins of some dungeon that these characters are building in, and it just kind of makes sense to make the stonework look a little shoddy. Now, these stencils and This protractor, you can pick it up anywhere. It's relatively cheap. Um, I'm pretty sure if you are taking, you know, some sort of like math or geometry class, chances are you're going to have a protractor or a compass. So the one thing that I've personally learned when it comes to inking your own stuff is understanding the tools that you're using because analog tools work in a particular way. You can't control Z your way out of analog. You can cover it up, you can fix a mistake in analog, but you are dealing with, ink and or possibly paint uh, covering itself, which is fine. You want a perfect example of someone that does that on the often. You watch any live stream with Daniel Warren Johnson, you're going to see it in action. Um, so I do apologize that this show, which was supposed to have been done last Sunday, I had some thunderstorms for a couple of days, and that's basically just kind of made the wireless just kind of go wonky. And didn't like the idea of just basically playing Russian roulette and just hoping that the wireless was going to cut out again right as I was streaming. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to postpone this. And the first thing I see when I wake up this morning is we just had a thunderstorm. So I'm like, ah, great. But yes, going back to just understanding the tools that you're using. One of the things that I'm always going to recommend is whenever you're testing out pens of any kind, brush pens or whatever, just grab a scrap piece of paper and just test it, especially if it's stuff that you haven't used before or you're borrowing it from someone else. Because depending on the climate, the humidity, and the elevation, and I've literally tested this. Uh, it changes how ink flows. Uh, One of the things that I noticed was that within the span of like 1 month, I was in Savannah, Georgia, doing a convention, and then like 2 weeks later, I had to be in Baltimore for that convention. And so you got difference of elevation, difference of climate, difference of humidity, and the brush pen was operating differently between the two. So for today, seems to be operating pretty well. Let's see. The weather has cooled off a little bit because of the rain, but dead of summer in North Alabama, brush pens, they just like to get juicy. Yeah, this is working great. So always do this on a scrap piece of paper and never the thing that you're going to be working on. It's a bit of a rookie mistake. But the one thing you should never do is complain about tools not doing the thing that they're supposed to be doing when they are doing it. You just have to lean into it. And it's the same kind of philosophy as borrowing a neighbor's lawnmower that just happens to be like one of those, push mowers that you got to, crank it, and you're complaining that it's broken because it's not starting up for you, and the neighbor goes cranks it one time and it starts up. Same kind of situation. Uh, you end up looking like a fool in the process. So that being said, there's nothing wrong with testing out the product that you have, but also understand that you are going to have to lean into whatever analog tools are going to be doing. Now, there is one thing I am going to go ahead and point out. So, despite the fact that we got these four characters walking up these stairs in the darkness, there is going to be two different light sources going on. One with the torch up front, and the other coming from the mage's staff. Now, I roughly, basically, just kind of did this thing with my pencil because I am going to be doing a little bit of a hack, which is despite the fact that, yes, there is a light source going on, and I could do just straight up realism, I'm not going to be doing that. And the reason being is that the focus is going to be on these characters going up the stairs, despite the fact that we do have a light source, well, two of them, excuse me. But the reason being is that it's going to be a bit of a hatchwork leading into like a white outline of sorts around these characters. So that way, the eyes want to gravitate towards them, and the stuff that's going to be outside of it is just there to basically, um, I guess, sandwich them in just a little bit. So the focus is still going to be on the characters, but the stuff on the outside is just extra, especially with it being blacked out. It's just using shapes and design to your advantage. And this really isn't a case of when in doubt, black it out. There was some definite thought process that went into putting this thing together, and there is some truth to that statement when it comes to inking and putting stuff together. But in this case, it's not that. So, even though that I basically just outlined this with the 0 to 10, as far as the finer details regarding the braids, the facial features, so on and so forth, we'll be going back in with this 005. And that's going to delineate some line weight between the focus of the outline of the character versus the smaller details within. Now, not saying that I can't do this all with the O2. The problem is that it's literally going to be the same line weight the entire time. And if that's your thing, go for it. Not going to stop you. But uh, considering there's a lot of small details going on within this, it's better to have that kind of difference in line weight. And I am going to be going over some of this with a slightly thicker line weight, again, in certain places. But I'm going to do that after I finish blocking all this in. I love the fact that I'm using an eraser shield as a ruler, and it's the complete opposite usage of an eraser shield. Really just didn't feel like having to stretch over to my right to grab a ruler, so we're going to be using this instead. Now, I've actually drawn these characters before, um, or a version of them. That was actually the graphic that I did about 2 years ago uh, for Free Comic Day. Sorry, not Free Comic Day, Free RPG Day. Now, since we're dealing with a lot of organic shapes, there's really, I'm not going to say that it's not necessary to have a nice, clean line, but because we are dealing with some organic shapes, it's totally fine if the line just happens to be a bit wobbly. Now there is hopefully time withstanding going to be doing some texture work of sorts, and we'll get into that part later. But that's going to be everything from hatching, cross hatching, to even using a sponge, which has kind of been my not so secret weapon as of late when it comes to inking. Oops. All right, so based on one of the characters is done, I'm going to be going back in with 005. So as you can obviously tell how thin that line is in comparison to the 02. And I wouldn't shield without some scuff marks. So I'm just gonna lightly put those down. Now, because this middle part, which I'm not even sure what the actual armory term is, but that plus the lip of it is obviously going to be metal as much as the spear tip is. So because there is going to be some light source stuff going on, I am going to be doing a little bit of metallic shooting to it. So not to worry about that, but that's going to be done a tad later. I like the idea of characters interacting with themselves or with other characters, I should say. I, as weird as this sounds, this particular thing, even though it is very simplistic, there are points where I'm just like, oh man, I don't know why I made that choice to have this off here or that foot there. Especially with just trying to create some sort of sense of depth to not just the individual stairs going up, but also like how wide would they be? How much is the foot sinking into the stone because it's so worn out from repeated use, so on and so forth. So it's a lot of things to think about whenever you're trying to put together a piece, even if it's just like a panel with your the comic that you're working on. All those storytelling aspects are still there. They still matter. Not saying that I could not have just copped out and just have like a fight scene, but why? I mean, I could just do something that's a tad more interesting. So, this part right here where the torch is burning, we're just going to be doing some really thin hatching, and then cross hatch a diagonal. And then we're going to do some vertical hatching. All right, so that's done. And then we're going to move to Mage's Staff. And now we're doing some really tight cross hatching for the metal part of this accent. Now, this piece is going to be digitally colored uh, after I finish inking all this, and it gets scanned. So I am leaving some areas, uh, I guess, would be considered left white. Okay, so we're going to move back over to these metal parts. It's really just a lot of controlled but simplistic cross hatching that is slightly curved because this is a bit of a dome. And we're basically just trying to get the shape. And that's about right. So just for right here, the lip, we probably want to be using some sort of dry brushing. So we'll get to that part later. Now we're going to be focusing on the stonework. That's going to be taking a decent amount of time, but we can do this. Now, I don't know if it's going to be showing up on the camera or not. This webcam that I basically pulled out of my storage uh, is a bit potato in quality. So, uh, see if I can zoom this in a little bit. Don't know if it's going to help it or not, but you know what? We're just going to get straight to it. So we're going to go back in with the O2. Now, with the stonework, I'm not being precious about, I guess, the exactness again, because like I said, we're dealing with a lot of organic shapes, and because we're dealing with a, a staircase in these ruins, it's pretty obvious that over time, stone tends to warp, uh, starts to erode, starts to smoothen out in places. I don't know if anyone here has ever gone up a um, not cobblestone, but basically just like a stone staircase of any kind. Uh, you'll notice that like because of like the hundreds of thousands of years of people just going up and down, that stuff starts to smooth out and almost kind of like concave just a little bit. So I'm trying to give off the same kind of context. Actually, I'm trying to think about what I'm doing right here. Yeah, actually, let me put just a tad too big, which is totally fine because I can just easily wipe that part out and redo it. I think if there's anything that I've studied the most comes to drawing, it's basically been brickwork, stonework, and trees. I'm not sure why that's the case, but they've always just been really fun to draw. Now, hopefully this shows up on screen. So, pretty obvious with underneath these archways, it's going to be in complete darkness. There, even though I am going to be trying to create the different pieces of stone that have been cobbled together and to make this, there is going to be some really tight cross hatching, and there's going to be some texture work with ink on a sponge to create a gradient leading up to here. And that's basically just to get the idea that, again, the focus is going to be on the characters. Uh, this is just secondary. I don't want to say noise, but it is going to be secondary to the overall picture itself. But it is also giving characters an environment to live in, or in this case, to go on a perilous adventure in. Now, not all the stone is going to be, completely square or rectangle. There's going to be just a bunch of like really weird, lopsided, rhomboid looking pieces within all of this. And there's going to be some definite gaps, as well as teeny tiny pieces. So with this, you can be as loose and sketchy, and it's going to look right. Now you're probably thinking this is going to be like very tedious, very time consuming, and for some person out there, it probably is. But for me, this is very meditative. My mom used to do something similar whenever she gets stuck on the phone with like a relative or someone, and she would just pull out the pad and would just start drawing hoops that are, I guess, kind of like chainmail linked together. And if she was really bored, she would put in like so much detail into it. So you can just tell that she was just like, I really don't want to be on the phone right now. So many parts. So we're almost done with brickwork. Sorry, I'm so silent. All right, so this is basically going to be the main part of all of this. So, how we're going to be tackling the gradient in regards to the brickwork, which before I do that, I'm going to erase some of these lines. So, this part is going to be considered time consuming for some people. Its mileage is different. But what I generally like to do is after these areas have been completely blacked out, which in fact I'm going to do that real quick just to give you the idea. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on this area. All right, so as you can always tell, I did start blacking out some of the brickwork here. Now, one of the things I like doing is taking a sponge, use the tip of this, and I'm just kind of lightly going over here so you can sort of see some of the ink starting to glisten because it's getting caught in the fabric and this. God, God, I'm forgetting the terminology, but basically, it's in the sponge. So, taking this and we're going to lightly dab. And maybe we're going to apply a little bit more. So now we're starting to get a lot of texture and a gradient that's starting to lighten up. And this is a lot easier than just putting ink at the end of a brush and flicking it, which is cool and it does its intended effect. The problem is that I would have to like tape off certain areas to make sure that uh, ink isn't splattering in places that it's not supposed to go. Porous, that's the word I was looking for. So, it, different kinds of sponges, depending on how porous it is or how not porous it is, it's going to create a completely different effect every time that you apply any sort of like ink or paint on it and then applying it on some paper. Sometimes it creates really cool designs, uh, other times, not so much. That's going to give you kind of like a general idea as to what this does. Put the sponge aside. Just want to use a different. So we're going back to cross hatching again. There's probably someone out there that's just like rolling their eyes, groaning. Not cross hatch. God, it's so lame. Well, guess what, kid? That is one of many lame things we gotta do in comics to create the worlds and environments that we do. So now to tell, zooming in here just a little bit, past and really just isn't wanting to focus. Okay, never mind. So I'm not exactly doing any sort of like real like uniforms cross hatching. I am kind of keeping it loose, but I'm trying to give these individual pieces of stone a shape of some sort. So now it's starting to become something. And of course, another way of doing it is basically just kind of doing this really quick blotting of sorts. Again, it's going to be giving off a particular gradient, but I do firmly believe that because we're dealing with such like massive uh, black shapes to give everything a bit of a graphic context to draw focus on the characters going up the stairs. Using that blotting technique with the ink and the sponge, it's really just going to help encapsulate everything. All right. So I think because of time, plus I've got a couple other things I got to do before the store can open today. Uh, it's basically all I'm going to be doing as of right now. I am going to be finishing this up, hopefully before I go to bed tonight. So it is going to take a little bit of time, but you know what? It's all worth it in the end. And I will be posting the final product of it very soon this week. So I thank you to anyone that has been watching. I do apologize for the fact that this particular video ended up being postponed this Sunday instead of it being shown last Sunday. But you know what? That's currently the system when it comes to wireless and thunderstorms. So all that being said, before I leave, in the comics, it's 1871 Slaughter Road, Sweet F, in Madison, Alabama. If you happen to like the show, any other show we do here, even particularly this one, please remember to like and subscribe, hit that bell notification, you know the drill. And if you want to figure out where you can find me on social media, you can follow me at tpriceartworks, type it in the search engine on your preferred social media site. 9 times out of 10, you'll probably find me there. And like I said, I hope all of you have a good rest of your day, uh, depending on what day you just happen to be watching us. So, adios. See you then.